It looks like the recording is working. That's kind of rare that everything seems to be working just fine on the first day. Let's wait up a minute and hope for the best. Oh, there we are, 6 p.m. Well, welcome back. Well, welcome to the fall 2025 semester. This could be your first. If not, welcome back everyone from a long summer break. Today's goal is not to do anything too serious or too intense. We're mainly just introducing ourselves to each other, introducing the course and going over the syllabus. And if we have some time at the end of this 50-minute block, we'll look into this section 5.1. But before we get started at all, does anyone have any questions to begin with? Okay, well, it's a fully online class in the sense that everyone here is coming in through Zoom, which is kind of nice in a way. Sometimes I've been given classes which are split, some people in the actual classroom, and some people just on Zoom as well. So everyone on Zoom at least means we're all on the same page. One thing that's kind of awkward about being on Zoom is every time I ask for a question, sometimes I might give a 5 to 10 second pause, which feels kind of uncomfortable, but it just allows people to form their thoughts. Accounts for a little bit of latency that you might have on your end, depending on your connection and those kinds of things. So let's get started then. A lot of new things happened this semester. Oh, hang on. I messed up something here. Oh, I need to end the share just a moment. I was going to say a lot of new things have happened this semester, and one of which is we have a whole new system, Windows 11 instead of Windows 10. And of course, we're going from Canvas, from Moodle to Canvas. And hang on, I seem to have some problems with my sharing right here. Let me end that and reshare everything. Okay, there we go, we're back. So while you relearn how to get all this working, let me just move some stuff around. It was a long summer break. I think I have lost a lot of muscle memory as well. I can't blame this all on this being Canvas. One unfortunate thing about unsharing is all my annotations gone, but those are usually doodles I put down if I'm a little bit bored waiting for class to start. So a couple things I was pointing out are there are some statements that are written just by ISU itself. That's this institutional syllabus statement you should take a look at, as well as the getting started with Canvas for students. If Canvas seems to be giving you trouble, you can always just email me or take a look into this document as well. And because this is coming through as a fully online class, my screen is kind of strange and limited looking. A lot of ways you can participate are through voice, also through chat. And if you want to see what the screen really looks like on my end, here, let me give you a kind of a window into it. It's kind of hard to actually show this without taking a screenshot. But this is what the screen actually looks like on my end. So I've got the Zoom controls up here on the upper right. So annotation controls on the left. And over here on the far right, I have the participants window. So anything you might decide to use, a thumbs up or raise your hand, asking a question, stuff like that, I try to pay attention to on the far right-hand side. If a chat comes through, and you are welcome to participate through chat, just know that sometimes it is a little bit trickier for me because I have to notice right here that something's changed, that I have a new chat notification. So if you ever notice I might have missed that chat, you could say resend it again. If anyone else in the classroom notices I'm not getting to my chat, it doesn't hurt to just say right over Zoom, hey, Mike, you missed a chat, and we'll get right to those. But the main thing I want to point out is there's lots of ways to participate. I don't have the actual cameras showing on the Zoom, so you don't have to be on camera yourself, mainly because I find that my own face is pretty distracting, so I don't like to look at it while I'm trying to present. And also, there's just not a lot of screen real estate right here. Once we get the actual stuff pulled up, whether it's a Word document, the notes we're looking at, or the syllabus, trying to fit everything at once into a screen is sometimes pretty tricky. But here we go. Looks like we're starting the course officially. We're going to go through the syllabus, not a line-by-line reading, but just over some of the key elements. mainly to ask what your questions might be. And so let's get started. First, let's take questions again. Any questions at the moment? Okay, well, we are now in pre-calculus 2, or sometimes I'll just resort to saying this trigonometry for short, or just trig. And as far as this class goes, like we mentioned, it's going to be completely on Zoom. I'll be recording each of these sessions, and you're probably already very familiar with this information if you made it into the class so far. Other things are, if you didn't make it in on the first day, it looks like we have 23 people out of 25 for the total class. You can always reach me by phone, by email here. I'm most responsive by email. My phone is silenced right now, for example. And I do have a bit of an email blockout period since I'm not checking my email usually right around 5:45 till, oh geez, about 8:45, which is when my second night class gets off. So as far as the email goes though, you can send me anything through this email. Usually this turns into one of the main modes that I'm going to work with you outside of class. Whether it's a question you might have on a homework assignment, any issues that you might have with the class itself, scheduling issues and those kinds of things, always just send it directly to here, and that's the best way for me to get back to you. I pay attention to this a lot through my working day, and even if I'm not on my email right away, even if you're, say, emailing at 3 a.m., some weird hour, something like that, just send that email and I'll get to it as soon as I'm able to see it the next morning. Next element here is the course webpage, but that's just we used to call this Moodle, now it's our Canvas page for the course. And going through here, next thing I'll be doing is office hours on a Monday through Thursday basis. They'll be in Zoom or by appointment, and I'll just be essentially inside here. I was in my office earlier today for office hours, but I'm going to be doing this from the classroom, so I have access to the same OWL camera and just some other additional technology in this classroom. So if the email's not working out for you, or if you just rather ask a question directly, you can pop in at any time, 4:15, 5:15, Monday through Thursday. So these are not scheduled. They're kind of like walk-in office hours, even though you're coming in through Zoom. So you don't have to have any kind of appointment whatsoever. But if you like, you could always give me a heads up. You could say, hey, Mike, I want to talk about this material. I'll probably come in at 4:30, something like that. It's always helpful, but never ever required. So that's the class getting a hold of me, those kinds of things, and this whole block right here. Any questions at the moment? Okay. And to be really upfront with you, it's been a while since I've worked. I stopped working on May 5th, and we're picking it up today on the 25th of August. So that's a long stretch. Usually when I get back to teaching, I start talking really, really fast. So if I say something too fast, don't hesitate to pump the brakes and just say, hey, Mike, what did you just say? Or I'm not sure what you meant by that. I'll be happy to clarify or just walk it back a bit. But one nice feature about this class is that the textbook is absolutely free. So this is from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Essentially what they did is they took some authors, some other textbooks, and they put together one textbook from material from other books. And that's where our actual textbook is going to be for this trigonometry class. This class is going to be really very highly traditional, other than you're coming in through Zoom. So the way a typical day is going to look like is I'll have the material we're going to be working on. Let me hide this just for the moment. Always just posted right here as a PDF. We haven't worked on it at all. It'd be completely blank. If we worked on it some, it might be completely filled out with all of our class solutions. And if you'd like a blank one, just come up here under blank lecture notes. I'll be uploading these on a section by section basis. So class pretty much starts by loading up one of these. Let's not worry about loading it up just yet. And my homework assignments are based off the notes that we're going to do right here. So if you click on the homework assignment, it says, do these particular exercises on page 570. That just means go back to this page here. Essentially, everything we're doing is from this Canvas page. And this is that free online textbook that we mentioned about in the syllabus. This is the PDF version, so you can just download it directly from this link. Or if you prefer, you can use this right here and just bookmark the book. So if you prefer looking at it, say, over the internet on a tablet or your laptop, that's a fine way to access the textbook as well. We might as well show what it looks like. So I have this textbook pre-downloaded on a thumb drive. I thought, let me double check. Yeah, here it is. So here is
I
just
don't
the
mean
result.
to interrupt, but there's a chat.
Thanks for spotting that. I'll get better at seeing that actual chat notification, which was a little red dot. I just haven't trained my eyes yet. Thanks for mentioning that. Luke says, is there an option for in-person office hours as opposed to Zoom? Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking about that. I need to update my syllabus right here, but it turns out, let's see, office hours are at these times, but let's just add this here temporarily. Through Zoom and in room CHE 215. So this is on the Idaho Falls campus. CHE stands for the Center of Higher Education, and that's the classroom I'm in currently right now. So I'll just be here 4:15 to 5:15 before class starts. And even if you're a fully online student, you're welcome to just show up in person. In fact, if you're on campus today and you just want to participate in class in person, nobody's stopping you. You can come in through the doors and that would be just fine. Any other questions about that so far? Yep, absolutely. Let me actually put this in red just as a reminder. They just approved this room for me, so I'm a little bit late on revising my syllabus that I'll be available in this room as well.
I do have a question before we move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so I've been online for my whole working for my degree, and I've never actually had to come to a Zoom meeting or a classroom. So I was just wondering, what is the policy for actually coming to class? Because I know that I might miss some maybe here and there. So I was just curious how that kind of works.
Gotcha. I don't have an official attendance policy. So if you have to miss a few classes here and there, I would honestly say that's pretty normal for just about every single student at ISU. So there's going to be no penalty whatsoever. I'm not going to track the attendance in that kind of way. And what you would do is, I mean, if you miss a class, now you do have some extra catching up work to do, but you would go to here on this playlist, recorded lectures. Everything we do is going to be recorded and just click on this. Let's make sure it actually works. It should take you to a YouTube playlist. Right now it's completely empty since we're recording our first class. So you just get caught up here. You can, of course, send me questions about class. I'll be happy to answer, and you'd be just fine. So if you have to miss a few classes here and there, again, that's pretty normal and no worries.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep, absolutely. And just to go along also with what Ty was asking, this class is kind of different from some online classes. This one's considered synchronous online, which means we all participate at the same time on a set schedule versus other online classes, asynchronous online, or more like you watch through modules that have videos that are all pre-recorded, that kind of thing. And then you just ask questions to the teacher or work with the class. So this one is pretending like we're all here in person in an actual classroom, except you just happen to be over Zoom is the major difference. Other questions so far? Okay, thanks for keeping these questions coming. These are great questions so far. And like we were mentioning, even though we're participating through Zoom, you are welcome to just walk in through the classroom and participate, or even during office hours, you could come in. And the course aside from that is highly traditional. So we have our textbook here. We're doing an actual homework assignment. You would go down to the assignment here. I will re-explain a lot of this stuff as we get going, since this is a lot of information for a first day. But it'll just be problem sets saying exactly which problems on which page number, which case you would go to the textbook. Now, if you're doing the online version, it doesn't show you a page number, but you would just go to the end of the relevant section. On an actual PDF version, this is what it would look like. This is a rather large book since this is pre-calculus 2, so it has college algebra at the very start. Go down to chapter 5, trigonometric functions. Go to section 5.1, but really click on 5.2, scroll up to the top. And now this is the end of section 5.1 where the exercises are. So looks like exercise 1, it's on page 580 here. This is kind of tricky because this is 580 on the document. I wrote 570. I'm gonna have to take a look into that. Sometimes working on these PDFs is a little bit tricky because this is page, let me show you what my annoyance is. This is page 570 of the actual physical book, but it's page 580 on the document. I'm not too sure which is the best to go by. So maybe the best policy is when you go to do a homework assignment, and we'll talk about this a little bit more again, it's always going to be at the very end of the section where your problems are. Let me know if it makes more sense to you to go with just the page number on the PDF rather than, let's see here, the page number on the actual book, since that is actually really pretty confusing. So after you do your homework, there's lots of ways you can do it. I'm going to be doing a lot of things on an actual digital file. So if I was doing homework here, it probably would look like this. Just open a Word document, say do problem number, I think it said 7 to start, and just start working out the solutions here. So if you're a person that likes to work digitally in this way, that would work out just fine. Just go to File, save it as, and let's see, set it to a PDF. Or if you're working on a Word document, I can accept Word files as well. If you're working on something a little bit more esoteric, it might be better to send it as a PDF file. And if there's any trouble, I'll just let you know. If I can't open your file, then I'll let you know that we might need to convert it to something else. That's one way to do your homework. If you're the more traditional sort of person, you can just grab ordinary lined notebook paper, pretend this is lined notebook paper, just do your problem right here. You would probably put your name on it, something like that. Then after you complete your assignment, just take a picture of your completed work and send it to my ISU email address. So there's lots of ways to do your homework, lots of ways to send it in. All of it's based off the free textbook. And if you're doing it on paper, you'd be emailing your assignment here. If you're working it digitally, you'd be sending it to the same email right over here as well. And for every email I receive, I watch my email like a hawk, so I don't think I've ever missed a homework assignment. But every time you do send a homework assignment by email, I'll always, on every single one of them, respond with just a quick thank you to let you know I received it. Oh, and I just noticed a chat. Yeah, absolutely, Grace. If you like graph paper, lined notebook paper, anything at all, that would work out just fine for your assignment. You are not required to use it. So personally, if I was doing it on paper, I'd probably just be using, let me see if I have any blank paper. I don't, but this is the assignment that I was working on today. I solved the same problems that I assigned just because I want to know, well, what did I assign? What questions might we have? And if my lecture notes are actually reflected in these same problems here. So if you just grab just plain paper like this and solve it there, that would work out just fine as well. So I would say it's all really up to your preference. If I can read your work, you're showing all your steps, then you've got a great set of work to send out as a complete assignment. Other questions at the moment? Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I noticed the first uh, homework assignment you had was due on September 3rd. Is that just because we're not working with that this week, or are they usually due next Wednesday?
Well, that's a great question. So these due dates right here are going to be kind of in flux. I usually don't make it come sooner, but my goal with every due date relative to every single assignment that we have posted is that I want to give you, oh, I can't open a calendar on this. I'm getting used to Windows 11. I'm used to opening a calendar here. Let me see, can I get a calendar going? This is not the best looking calendar, but anyways, let's go with this one. So my goal with every assignment is, you hear the computer fan spinning up. If I have it due on September 3rd, then that means my goal is to have it completed in class lecture a week before. This is not a helpful visual. Let me just click that away. I'm gonna have to get used to Windows 11 a little bit better. But September 3rd due date means I'm intending to have this particular section 5.1 completed when we return next Wednesday. And my goal is to always give exactly a 1 week turnaround on the due dates as well. So that gives you time to ask questions during office hours, through email and those kinds of things before submitting your assignment. So if I give it a little bit extra time, then I might adjust this, or usually what happens more often than not is if we take a little bit extra time in section 5.1 for whatever reason, I'll push this due date out by a couple of days. So it's always a week out from when we actually complete the section 5.1 notes. So back to the Canvas page. Once these notes are completed in their entirety, then that due date is considered official. And that's pretty much how every single assignment is going to work going forward.
Okay. So it's always 1 week after we're done with the material.
Yes, absolutely. That's a faster way to say it now that I think of that. Other things to keep in mind is my due dates, they're really more about pacing in the course. So I do realize that people sometimes have things that come up. You might get sick, something could happen at work. Maybe, I was gonna say your car could break down and couldn't make it to class, but that's not as relevant. So the due dates here, they're mainly for pacing. If you do have a late assignment, still can get it completed. I will still accept those for full credit. Justin says, open your calendar on the bottom and there's an arrow to show the full calendar. So on the bottom, and oh, I see it now. Thanks, Justin. That's a really important hack for me. So thanks to Justin's hack. So the thing I was trying to show visually is we complete the section on the 27th. I'll put the due date 1 week down on the 3rd. I'm gonna have to remember that trick there. Any other questions or comments so far? Yeah, I agree. Thanks again, Andrew, Justin, for that. Go ahead, Kyler. That might have been from an earlier hand raise.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yep, you're coming through great.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I just had to switch something on my computer. So with the email for assignments, we just have to label it as whatever assignment it is, attach it and send it to you. Is that right?
Yeah, that'd be great. If you sent out your assignment, something along the lines of assignment 5.1, something along those lines, that'd work out perfectly. Some people like to get really, really verbose and go math 1144, section 06, assignment 5.1, but you don't have to get too carried away unless this is just helpful for your inbox organizing.
Okay.
You send me something along these lines, just 5.1, that's good enough information for me as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions at the moment? Okay, well, this shows pretty much how the class is going to operate. It'll be through the textbook, assignments will always be posted, the notes will always be really heavily targeted to the actual assignment itself. If you ever do an assignment and you feel like, I'm not sure what this question is asking or if we even did it, don't ever hesitate to reach out. For example, you might be doing work, say, somewhere over here, and let's pretend that, let's go to an example. Let's pretend this is your work right here. You can just take a actual screenshot of this, put it on a file, send it in an email, anything like that, and just send this out to me like this. You could say, hey, Mike, I am not sure if these steps are correct. And anything along those lines, I'll be happy to engage with you on. So connecting with me on email could be a great way to come in and get some extra work done, or get some questions answered is a better way to say it. Since I do realize for a lot of people, if you saw those office hours, they didn't seem great since some people might not just be available at those times. I'm available by appointment as well, but email is also a great resource. And again, you can send me really anything you like. If you're not sure how to get started on a problem, I'll be happy to work with you on that. And, well, that's the major things I wanted to talk about from the syllabus. There's also a calculator policy from the math department on this. We'll talk about these a little bit more as we get closer and closer to our first exam. And if you're curious about dates, the day-by-day syllabus is way down here on the third of the fourth page. Also, the syllabus is to some degree kind of replicated here for the major important dates. So if you're on the Canvas page, just scroll down, and we already have a holiday coming up a week away from today. We'll remind ourselves of that next Wednesday. Scrolling down further is the exam one date right here, and the policy on taking exams in an in-person testing center. As soon as we get closer and closer to the September 15th date, I'll be posting extra information here on review problems, the exact coverage of exam one, and materials along those kind of lines so that we know what's coming up and how to prepare for the exam. It's a 50-minute class, so the exams themselves are going to be 50 minutes. That means they're not going to be very long exams. We just have to be prepared for the problems that are coming up. Any questions at the moment about the exams? Okay, we're going to skip through this stuff right here. I think this is good stuff for you to take a look at on your own reading through. On the homework, we've discussed how it works quite a lot. But I also want to mention that another major idea about the homework is I'm not assigning a lot of questions. I'm assigning essentially the main essential questions you're going to need to know to pass the exams. So think of every homework assignment as kind of like an exam one dress rehearsal on your very first assignment. I'll be looking at your step-by-step solutions. I'm going to myself provide you with a lot of feedback so that you'll know if this was a real exam problem about where you're going right and what information could be missing, what mistakes you might have made. So I'll provide feedback on all, I should have said here, graded assignments. Let me fix this. We do not have quizzes, so think of the assignments as the major assessment and exams the second one. And the feedback is meant to help you prepare further for the upcoming exams. Oh, also information is we're going for exact answers for a lot of the work that we do in trigonometry, but occasionally we will want a decimal approximation on problems that specifically ask for it. But another expectation on these homework problems and a lot of the exam questions is we're going to write down exact answers like square root 3/2 as opposed to 0.87. And that'll make a lot more sense why. Once we actually define the trigonometric functions, we're going for their exact outputs when we start practicing them with them in sections 5.2 and 5.3. So that's just the additional information about the homework I want to get out there. Aside from that, you might have saw in this day-by-day schedule, we have 3 50-minute exams, and we do have a 2-hour final exam, which feels kind of lopsided with the 50-minute exams, but this usually is not too big of a deal. We'll get through it and have the same kind of extra help study guides and things like that to help out. Exams 1 and 2 are going to be closed calculator for this course, possibly just exam 1, depending where we are in the material. But once we get to the end part of the course, particularly exam 3, we'll be doing a lot more applications. We'll be working with the calculator a lot more. So exam 3 and the final exam are open calculator. Possibly exam 2, this just depends again where we end up in the material. Well, I think this is pretty much the whole syllabus. This took a half an hour, but you know what? That's time well spent. Those are a lot of great questions that people asked. Any questions at the moment before we leave the syllabus?
Could you possibly elaborate on, I guess, like the testing centers and taking the exams in person? Because I thought this was all online.
Yeah, that's another great thing to mention. Even though this course is labeled as fully online, the math department itself has a requirement of in-person examinations for this particular class. So that sometimes is kind of a scary thing. A lot of people take this class, end up being close to the Pocatello Testing Center or the Idaho Falls Testing Center, and occasionally get people far out closer to Boise State University, or maybe closer to the University of Idaho, somewhere around Moscow, and even in central Idaho. So I'm very happy to work out with arrangements. And I'll be contacting everyone individually, probably on Friday of this week, to determine the nearest testing center local to you. Does that make sense about that requirement there?
Yeah.
Awesome. And if you're concerned about that, don't hesitate to email right away. This is one of those unfortunate policies that comes down from the math department itself. It's mainly because they have found in the math department that it's extremely tricky to do secured examinations over things like, I think they were called Examify. There's been a lot of weird products that the math department just got fed up with and then made this an overall policy for every class. So it does feel like a weird thing to have it said it's fully online, but then we do have this requirement here. So again, if that's a concern for anyone, don't hesitate to contact me after class. I'll be happy to see what we can do to get you in a nearby testing center. Other questions so far?
Looks like Justin had a good point in the chat. And if that's possible, that's probably something I'd be interested in as well.
If you're in Arizona in college algebra, I was able to take it on Zoom through the Idaho Falls Testing Center. I'll have to work out with the department to find out exactly, but let me make a quick note. So this was for you and Alex as well?
And Matt McClendon.
Gotcha, Matt McClendon. Let me make a quick note on this. Everything's quicker when you're used to a different version of Windows. Might be misspelling your name just a little bit, but I'll get it looked up. Okay. Gotcha. I'll look into see what that can be done on that end there. Let me also take a screenshot of that just for my own reference. I'm going to hide it down here on the syllabus below. This is my own personal note as well. Other questions at the moment? The 50 minutes is a strict time limit. Yes, that's correct. Thanks for mentioning that, Luke. So one issue that is mainly an issue of fairness. But another thing that happens because of the 50-minute strict time limit is I'm not going to try to write an exam that goes the full 50 minutes. What I'm usually trying to do is write an exam. If this was a 75-minute exam, I've been trying to write a 50-minute exam with 25 minutes built in for just reviewing your work, double checking your answers. With a 50-minute exam, what I'm trying to really do is write a 35-minute exam that a well-prepared student could complete with about 15 to 10 minutes of just looking over your answers, double checking your work, and that kind of stuff. So although the 15-minute time limit is strict, it's not going to be just pages and pages of exam material. Other questions at the moment? Oh, to get back to Alex's question on there. Sorry, I got a little bit behind on the chat. Yes, that does mean for exams 1 and possibly exam 2 as well, depending on where we end up in the material, like I mentioned, it's going to be closed calculator. So that means all the computations you do is really just going to be based off memory. And that'll make a lot more sense once we actually get into defining the trigonometric functions, the unit circle itself. The back of my examination does have some information, some formulas and things like that that you can use as a reference to help those computations along. But you'll see once you do the actual homework problems, we're going to be going for exact answers that look essentially along these lines. We'll write cosine for a cosine function. We're using lots of function notation, so we may use parentheses, or sometimes we might leave them off. But if we're doing something like cosine pi over 6, we just have to know the exact value of that is root 3 over 2. So knowing this value right here is part of the major part of exam 1. That's per certain functions at the certain right inputs evaluate to these exact expressions. And that's the major reason why the calculator is closed on exam 1. What I found is when I ask for the exact answer like this on exam 1, but it's open calculator, sometimes several students could lose tons of points because they may just not realize that they needed to have this answer as opposed to the decimal approximation. But the final and exam 3 are going to be open calculator. Does that make sense for the calculator policy so far? Yes, absolutely. Thanks for asking about that. And while we're at it, any other further questions about exams, homework policies, anything else along those lines?
Mike, I just emailed you. I live in Rhode Island, so I'm sure you don't have, a testing center in mind there, but if you want to just respond to the email, so we can try to figure that out. I figure that might take a little work.
Yeah, we can make that work for sure. I've worked
Okay.
with testing centers, not in Rhode Island before, but a lot of various interesting places like in California as well. So you'd be surprised how easy it is to make some of these things work out.
Okay, great.
As far as extra credit goes, I do not take extra credit in this course, but I do have some smaller kind of lower stakes extra credit opportunities on some of the exams themselves, particularly the final exam. But I don't have any major extra credit assignments or anything along those lines, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm just kind of clicking randomly at the moment. Well, as far as the other big part of the course is the grading structure. The final exam is going to be worth 25% in this class. The average of exams 1 through 3 will be 50%, so that's going to be a large block of the credit. And for this class, homework is worth quite a lot. It's going to be worth 25%, the other half of the final exam. And this is really bumped up quite a lot, but I feel like it's appropriate for a class like this one where really the best way to get successful on exams 1 through 3 is to do really well in the homework. So I make the homework work a lot. I encourage you to ask questions, to go for real mastery when you do your homework assignments, because as you're doing your homework problems, you're really doing it, like we mentioned, a dress rehearsal of the real exam problems. And that's going to help you tremendously on getting through the final exam itself. So the grade structure is a traditional grading scale through here with this breakdown, being more generous on the homework rather than bumping up the final exam. And I think that's really pretty much the whole syllabus. At the very end of my syllabus, I do have university resources, which are important statements written on the university level that you should take a look at. Some of these have been updated. Some of these are important laws that really don't update a whole lot, but you should be very, very aware of. So take a look at these kinds of things. If you've read them before, it might not hurt to just skim over them to see what might be new inside there. And we did it, folks. That's the whole entire syllabus. These kind of courses can sometimes be a bit confusing to get off the ground. So we spent about 40 minutes, but I think that's time well spent. Any questions whatsoever, folks, about any of these elements so far? Okay, well, we have 10 minutes to go, which is, again, not a whole lot of time to jump into a section 5.1. I just want to give you kind of a preview of what class is going to look like when we come back on Wednesday. Pretty much we'll be back on this page staring at this through Canvas. I might have some kind of announcement right here, but I'm always going to scroll the Canvas page to just right where we currently are in the assignment. I'll also have open section 5.1 right here. Here it is. An idea with these notes, you can find them under the blank lecture notes as either a Word document or as a PDF file for extra compatibility on the PDF. The idea is you probably want to have this ready to go as you're beginning to start class. That way you're not writing down all this information on every single idea or definition we get through. And it's a certain sense a bit of a worksheet that we work together through class. Everything we're going to do, we're going to solve by hand. We'll start with maybe just one thing, and we'll come back and do example 1 on Wednesday. So a lot of these definitions come out of the book. Some of them are just verbatim right out of the textbook. So any pre-reading you do before class is going to help you out quite a lot. But a lot of the things that are missing in some of these notes is, the diagrams. And that's one of the things that's interesting about reading a mathematical textbook is a mathematical textbook, say this one right here, gives you a lot of information. Let me show you some of this stuff. They'll give you a definition. They'll show you the exact diagram. But sometimes the best way to learn this kind of stuff is to ignore the diagram itself and focus on the definition, going line by line, trying to see how it all fits. The diagrams that the book provides, it's good stuff, but sometimes it's so chock full of information that it can be overwhelming, where we want to see how things come together piece by piece, especially if we're learning a concept for the very, very first time. So we'll spend just a little bit of time on this definition, take some questions, and end class possibly 4 or 5 minutes a little bit early today. But here's where we're going to start off. We're in chapter 5 rather, on trigonometric functions. Just like in college algebra, we're just defining a new class of function. In college algebra, you would have had f of x equals x squared for a typical squaring function, or maybe log base 8 of x for a logarithmic function. So our new class of functions, the trigonometric ones, they're the ones that show us how things repeat. Sometimes these are called the cyclic functions. They're a little bit more tricky to define, so that's why in section 5.1, the whole point of this section is defining the domain of all 6 trigonometric functions that we're going to be taking a look at. Fix that there, that looked a little bit odd. So our work is to define the domain of the trigonometric functions. And these are functions that take as an input the domain elements, angles. So that's where the definition has to start. What exactly do we mean by an angle? So it says an angle is formed by 2 rays with a common endpoint, which we'll call the vertex. That can go down a rabbit hole of what we mean in definitions. By a ray, we mean just a line segment that has a starting point and goes off in this particular direction, that particular slope. We really have 2 rays it's talking about here, so we'll define another one going off this way. And the angle is a measurement between the 2. We'll often use Greek letters like, say, this letter here, theta. Or oftentimes if we need multiple Greek letters to represent our angles, we might use other things like this one, phi. I put a little directed arrow here to just indicate there's an actual direction that this arrow has. This will be useful to us later to determine positive and negative arrows. So the arrow here means that right here at the vertex, we have even more going on. We have an initial side. We start here, which is what the arrow diagram is trying to indicate. This was our initial side of our angle. And then this whole piece, kind of you want to imagine it like a movie where it started here, but eventually it rotated in a certain way and then just stopped, giving us this terminal side right here. So if we can make some measurement here on what we mean by that angle, we'll have a good definition of what we mean by angles in the first place. And then in section 5.2, we'll actually define the trigonometric functions bit by bit. But this is what the class is all about to start us off. Any questions about the definition so far? Okay, so this is pretty much what a lot of our work is going to look like on a class by class basis. Our goal is to solve all problems on these documents here. Once class ends, I re-upload on this file right here. So however far we got, you'll see the solutions we got to on this part here. And these are always going to be the repository if you just want a clean version without everything filled in. Things you might print out or download before class, for example, before we get started. Well, we went to about 6:45. Our class typically ends at 6:50. I try to go right to the minute, but sometimes we might end a couple minutes early. I hate to do it. Sometimes we might go 30 seconds a little bit too late just to finish off a thought, something along those lines. But any last questions at all, folks, before we call it a day a few minutes early today? We don't want to throw too much out at us today to start out. Okay, well, when we come back, I'll be back here, parked at this screen right here, the upload version of this. Also, if you had to step out at some point at any class, I'll be also updating this playlist. Usually YouTube is pretty fast, but it just depends. I've seen before that this could take up to a one-day turnaround for the actual lecture to show up. But I usually try to get this put into the playlist right after class ends, depending on the number of questions I might have after class and that kind of stuff. But this is where we're going to stop today, and that means this is exactly where we'll pick up when we come back on Wednesday. Have a great evening, folks. If you do have any further questions, don't hesitate to ask them right here and now. I'll be happy to help out. Or send an email later on, and I'll be happy to get to you, usually probably something like 7:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. But have a great night. We'll see you Wednesday.